This Advertiser.ie Connacht Championship Final preview was brought to you in association with Breaffy House Resort. On Sunday, Breaffy House have a matchday special where you can stay with bed and breakfast for €45 per person sharing, or a single supplement of €30, and kids B&B at €10. Matchday specials include $9.95 for the roast of the day, and for more information log on to www.breaffyhouseresort.com. You're very welcome to the very first Advertiser.ie football podcast. Today we'll be looking forward to the Connacht Senior Football Final between Mayo and Galway in McHale Park this coming Sunday. We're recording this podcast in the beautiful surrounds of Breaffy House Resort just outside of Castlebar, and I'll be joined by an expert panel who will go through the ins and outs of the games on Sunday. I'll be joined by Mayo legends John Maughan and John Casey, and All-Ireland winners from Galway, Silke and Kevin Walsh. And just to start the ball rolling, lads, is there any point in Galway showing up at all? Mayo are going to this game. John Maughan, what do you think?
Oh, there certainly is. We're not going to buy into that kind of talk, Colm. There's a great history, a great tradition of Connacht finals between Mayo and Galway. And unfortunately, from a Galway perspective, and even from a Connacht football perspective, the last couple of years, Galway haven't really shown up. But having witnessed their victory down in Markovich Park a couple of weeks ago, they look very formidable. They might be quite back with the old swagger of old, but certainly they have improved, and they look like a very, very formidable outfit. And lots of young quality footballers, and on the flip side of the coin, Mayo don't appear. If you were to benchmark our performance against Roscommon, the first round of the championship, it was our second round, semi-final that is, against Roscommon in particular, it was very ordinary. We had huge question marks, and it was only when we introduced Alan Dillon and particularly Andy Moore in the last 10 or 12 minutes that we got over the line. But certainly, benchmark, looking at it at both teams, I think we could have a cracker on Sunday.
And what do you think, Ray?
Well, I think there's definitely a point in Galway coming down, and maybe you don't want the prediction too early, and I don't want this to become John being cagey, me being cagey. I don't think that's why people are going to click on Galway Advertiser to see that, but based on unknown form, it looks like a Mayo win. I suppose if you look at last year, they got to an All-Ireland final, the year previously an All-Ireland semi-final. The reality of the situation is Galway haven't won a Connacht title since 2008, which is a long time ago. We were talking about on the way down, myself and Kevin, there's only 6 of last year's team playing this year, so Galway have made a lot of changes. I suppose Alan Mulholland felt he had to make those changes, but we're hoping for a good display, a positive display, and at least there's a good back door, unlike our poor Miners last week when they got robbed by Mayo, let's be honest, down in Tuam Stadium. So there's no back door for them, so at least there's a back door for the Galway seniors, whichever team loses. But I suppose I don't know, are we going to be our forwards going to be able to do enough against the Mayo defence? So we're going to be very dependent on Shane Walsh. Eddie Hoare is playing well now. He scored 7 points for St Michael's last week in the championship. Young Fintan O'Curran, Tom Flynn were excellent against Sligo, as John said, but Sligo were poor, and they went up and beat Wicklow, fair enough. So look, the reality, and I sat beside you last year, John. I think at the game, Mayo beat Galway by 17 points last year. And that's a seismic gap. They went down and they beat Donegal, they beat Tyrone, they put it up to Dublin. We've had no form like that in Championship at all to go on the last few years. We've been beaten by Sligo when Kevin was over us. We got beaten Tipperary and Wicklow, Tipperary and Waterford could have beaten us last year. We put it up to Cork, admittedly, but we saw how poor Cork were yesterday against Kerry. So going on all form, Mayo should win next Sunday. However, we're not going down totally defeated either.
And what do you think, John?
Well, despite Ray saying he wasn't going building up Mayo's chances, he just after doing the exact opposite. Mentioning all the big scores we had last year, he's right. But you know what, Galway got an awful hiding in Pearse Stadium last year, Colm. None of us saw it coming. It was of seismic proportions. Their under-21s are finally, they've won 2 All-Irelands. There's sometime Mayo are going to get turned over sooner or later. I'm going to agree with Ray, I don't think it's going to be Sunday. I think it might be a year too soon for the current Galway team, but it's going to be really soon. But I think the panel here and everybody hopes that it's a more competitive game. I think Galway look to have some really good players. I mean, you mentioned there O'Curran and Flynn at midfield, very impressive. 2 big units, 1 traveller with the ball. Flynn, great runner. Shane Walsh at centre forward, very good, going to give our supposedly brilliant half-back line a lot to think about. Galway's work ethic was superb against Sligo. They tackled really hard down in Markovich Park, which was very impressive. They threw in the white flag very early in Pearse Stadium the last day, and I think we're in for. I don't think Galway will win on Sunday, but I think it will be a lot closer than a lot of people think.
And Kevin, what do you think? I suppose the Galway performance against Sligo, you've an intimate knowledge of the Sligo team that most of the people wouldn't have. What do you expect from Galway going on Sunday?
I suppose I agree with the lads. I think it may be a year or two too early. Having said that, maybe to look at the negatives on the Mayo side, I would have felt maybe in the Derry match, up against the 40-man Derry, that was a kind of a time of the league where you put your best foot forward. I think Mayo did fail that day. They've come out since, and I think 2 or 3 fellas would have won the half order, and younger fellas were taken off in the championship. So have they found that new extra spark they need to go to the next step for this year? I haven't seen it arriving just yet. But on the other side, I suppose, look at I was at the Sligo game. I thought the intensity levels were actually low on both sides. I watched it from the terraces. I thought Galway were kind of in third gear. They weren't overly tested on that day, so it's hard to know where they are. The young lads in the middle are definitely a big help at the moment. So they're going to talk about them, but they've played in 2 games. Their London game was and I thought the intensity was low for the Sligo game, to be honest with you. So when the intensity is up, can they match that intensity? I'm not so sure can they match that intensity just yet.
I suppose now, John Casey, like you were forward in your playing days. Like Mayo, how does Mayo forward stack up this time? Are we still looking for that marquee forward that's going to go on further and win All Ireland's?
Well, everybody is looking for the new Kieran MacDonald or for a go to in the county, and unfortunately we don't have one. They're going to try and look for the unit to play as a unit, Colm, but the half forward line that started against Roscommon, there was a lot of question marks over them, whether they were inexperienced, but I know they have to get experience. They don't need a marquee forward, particularly against Galway. I don't think they need a marquee forward. They're going to have to play well as a unit, but they're not going to, as Ray mentioned earlier, the huge scores they kicked last year, I mean, they were phenomenal, 4-16, 4-20 in games, absolutely huge scores. They're not scoring that. Our guys have been basing their game on a strong defence the last number of years. They've been leaking and very porous in the league this year and not scoring as much. So it's kind of nearly a turnaround in a full season. Are they going to get huge scores against Galway? I think Alan Mulholland would be quite cagey. He'll probably take a letter from John Evans' book and he'll tighten up and he'll try to frustrate the living daylights out of Mayo, because if you give them open space, of course you can make fairly average players look good. So he'll try and tighten things up. But we are missing that marquee forward that will score you the 10 points.
Yeah, I agree. But we didn't need a marquee forward last year. People were saying like Mayo have been missing this marquee forward. The reality is, if we had an ordinary forward, someone that had kicked 2 points at the half forward line, the last 2 All Ireland finals, we probably would have won that elusive All Ireland title. Form. There was no form yesterday for the Munster final. Like, I mean, if you take a look at Kerry's performance, well, they were absolutely fantastic. Now they struggled over the line against Clare. I mean, and all known form going into the game. I expected Cork to win yesterday, albeit they did struggle against what was, in hindsight, quite a good quality Tipperary side who hammered Longford at the weekend. So, I mean, maybe we're underestimating the quality of that game. I mean, I don't think form counts for an awful lot when it comes into a Mayo Galway game. It takes on a kind of a life of its own, and I think we will see intensity because it's that unique kind of a love-hate relationship. We love having the crack with Galway, but when we get them on the pitch, the 70 minutes of kind of a high intensity, because there's great old rivalry there. And I don't think there's any question of a Mayo or Galway guy throwing up the white flag. Last year, for some reason, we got the game on our terms, on the Mayo terms, and we were able to set the tone, the agenda for the game from the very, very start. And that can be difficult for a young enough Galway side. Now, Ray has mentioned there's 10 or 11 changes, certainly nine changes. I can understand why Alan Mulholland would want to do that. There's a lot of young talented young players coming through, and you mentioned Eddie Hoare there, and Danny Cummins, and you mentioned Shane Walsh. Like, I mean, Shane Walsh, I mean, if you were to watch the quality of his play against Sligo, he was absolutely great. It was as good a forward play as I've seen, left and right foot.
That's where the intensity is going to come though, John. That's
well, our half back line, Kevin.
Yes.
Our half back line against, and we've relied on our launch pad and our platform for a lot of our scores and a lot of our attacks comes from Lee Keegan in particular, Vaughan and Boyle.
Lee Keegan's having a quiet season though.
Quiet season in championship terms. I thought against a couple of the league games he played, he was absolutely outstanding, but he seems to have gone off the boil. And if for some reason, I know Alan Mulholland will go out and he'll definitely target our half back line. And if he can put the stoppers on Mayo's half back line, they stand a great chance.
Do you reckon they'll be able to do that, Ray?
Well, the Galway team hasn't been picked at the time of this broadcast, but Micheál Lundy from Corofin is going to be number 10, Shane Walsh, and there is probably Damien Comer is in under 21. They're tough, ragged enough players. Michael Martin, I'd say if Paul Conroy's fit, he has to come in somewhere. So that's going to be forwards. Eddie Hoare will be there because of Catholic, and Danny Cummins scored 4 points from play the last day, so he'll be playing. But Keegan, I think Keegan's a fantastic player,
Brilliant.
and I saw him in the league match against Kerry. But someone said he'd been a bit sick coming up, or he had a flu or something. So maybe that was his reason. His form wasn't that good, but they do have to stop them. But the difficulty, I suppose, and Kevin and John have managed it at quite high levels. If you play 10 and 12, go back deep, then you're drawing them onto you, or do you stay up there? But I do think we'll have to create a little bit of a defensive shield. We're very naive last year, like Donald Vaughan kicking it into an empty net. Gareth Bradshaw, captain, got sent off, and Niall Coleman got sent off. I think we've improved, but there's pressure on Mulholland as well, in that it's his third year, Colm. He's been there. We need to see progress. And it's going to be tough, but I think he has nothing to lose in one way on Sunday, in that I don't think there'll be any national newspaper. I think there's 7 of them. I'd say the Mayo Advertiser and the Galway Advertiser will probably be going for a Mayo win. So Galway have that one advantage, and we won't get into too much psychology with but if a team expects to win, and if Colm Boy and Lee Keegan and Killian O'Connor have been told all week that they're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win, that gives Galway just a chink of opportunity that you can't change it if the game goes out there. So if Shane Walsh goes out and does well and gets a goal, or Cummins or something spectacular, or particularly Finton, Kevin is his club manager at the moment, if he goes out and has a storming game and maybe Aidan O'Shea gets a black card, well, then the dynamic changes enormously.
Yeah.
So that's what Galway are looking for, is just a little bit of something that happened to sway things slightly in their favour, because I do think we're going to need that. It's kind of stop them. It'll be tough. Keegan's an all-star, Boyle's an all-star, Keith Higgins an all-star. Our last all-star was 11 years ago.
Will Boyle mark Shane Walsh?
Well, he's been picked as an orthodox centre half back. It hasn't worked out particularly well against Roscommon. You could clearly see that position didn't suit him. I mean, Donald Vaughan has been moved to the wing because quite clearly
doesn't suit him either.
He doesn't suit him either. And Lee Keegan, obviously the biggest aspect of his game is driving forward. So we don't have that orthodox centre half back, that stopper. But we have 1 or 2 lazy midfielders. Aidan O'Shea might find himself sitting back there, very well yourself, Colm. But and I think that's a key part of this whole match scenario, and how it comes in midfield. I know Kevin.
And we'll pick up midfield in part 2.
The funny part about it is, if you were a Mayo manager, would you, to keep Walsh as far away from the Mayo goal, would you try to set him up with Vaughan, who will gallop up the other end of the field, or would you want a Boyle who's a stopper dogging him? And they're the questions that you know.
But if you go back to last year, we're talking about midfield and half back lines here. The game was over by half time.
Yeah.
I think Mayo had scored something like 3-11. 3-4 that came from turnovers in the Galway full back lines. This is before you come out to where we're talking about here. They pushed up high. Galway used the lateral pass like we call it the rugby pass, rather than going back in the V type, whatever. Like there was 3-4 turned up in the first half. If that hadn't happened,
we don't know how it goes.
We don't know how it goes. So if that stopped, maybe there'd be more of a game coming up towards that.
And we'll pick up that and more, and probably the midfield battle in the second part of this podcast. This Advertiser.ie Connacht Championship Final preview is brought to you in association with Breaffy House Resort. Log on to www.breaffyhouseresort.com. And welcome back to part 2 of the Advertiser.ie podcast. Looking forward to the Connacht football final between Mayo and Galway on Sunday. We'll pick up the discussion when we look at the midfield. Kevin, where do you reckon the midfield battle is going to go on Sunday?
I suppose it's a crucial. It's the biggest probably line on the day, but it depends what Mayo go with. Aidan O'Shea started centre half forward, Gibbons midfield, and maybe Seamus in the centre. I presume so will happen. But the big question is, I suppose, for the 2 young fellas from Galway, 2 22-year-olds, 6'5", 6'6", physicality. They've been very good right through their own ages, and this is really their first big test. And a lot of it is probably in the psychic side of it. Are they ready for it? And the signs were coming through the last 2 games that they are. They don't know how they could do. But this test is stepping up next Sunday, and if they can manage them in the centre, it'll certainly be bringing the game a lot closer than what it was last year. And John, where do you think, what midfield pairing do you think James Horan will go for? This is a big decision for him. He has a number of options.
Well, a few months ago he was spoiled for choice. He had the guts of 5 to pick from. He had the 2 O'Sheas, he had Tom Parsons, he had Gibbons and Barry Moore. All of a sudden 3 got injured, so he was left with no choice. Out in New York, it had to be the 2 O'Sheas. But the midfield battle, mobility is crucial. It's not about pulling balls out of the skies, and we saw evidence from the Galway Sligo match about the pace of Flynn, and he would worry me. And I don't think that we have guys that will, we mentioned last year Sean Kavanagh from Tyrone, and Seamus O'Shea done a brilliant marking job on him. I think James Horan will probably go for something similar, because Tomas Flynn was very, very dangerous against. He ripped through the heart of the Sligo defence. So I think straight away, if I was Mayo manager, Seamus O'Shea would be assigned a job. don't get the ball, Seamus, just stop Flynn running through. Then the big question, as Kevin mentioned it then, is Aidan O'Shea going to start at 8 or 9, or is he going to start at 11? The bottom line about it is Gibbons will probably start. Our half forward line was so weak against Roscommon. I funny feeling it'll be Gibbons and Seamus O'Shea midfield, and probably Aidan O'Shea at 11.
And what do you think, Ray?
Well, I suppose we're analysing the Roscommon Mayo game. We were all going for Mayo, but you know that was a prediction again. Yeah. Alan Freeman gets taken off, Jim O'Connor gets taken off, and the other wing forward, what was his name? Jason Doherty gets taken off as well. So, you know, I think it's the middle 8 really. You know, so it's 5 to 12 really that's going to count. I expect Fintan O'Curran, if someone's Manus Barnock, I expect O'Curran to do well in there most definitely, and I think John's right that Finn can do damage. So it's I suppose it's what's going to happen around that central diamond. So Galway will have Bradshaw, Gary O'Donnell and young Paul Varley. Varley lacks a little bit of power. We'd hope Brad should be better than he has been, because he was disappointing, and we were hoping for a big game from him. And Gary O'Donnell has settled in well at 6, like he's more an orthodox stopper. So I don't think it's all about the midfield, it's what's happening around there, but it's one of the lines that I would expect Galway maybe to win. Watching Seamus against Roscommon, and I coached him in St. George's, he's a super young fella, well he's a man now and all that, but he takes a lot out of the ball sometimes. I think he solos too much. Against Roscommon he was soloing, and I think Aidan could lay it off quicker as well. What impressed me most about Fintan, and Kevin's here, and I think he's been a help with me all balance. When Fintan's getting it now, he's doing the simple things. He's getting it, laying it, laying it. And that, I think Galway could win 8 and 9, and that could give them a platform. Whether we're good enough up front, I don't know or not, but that's our big hope going down really, I suppose. Finian Hanley being in full back then, and a big event was Josh Moore from Montbellew. He's been very, very good. He's 22, young doctor. He's back, and that gives an option, because obviously we had our own problems in the camp with Johnny Dewan and Gary Sice, unfortunately. Corfin is on the panel as well for whatever reasons. But look, Adam Mulholland, Paul Clancy and Declan Meehan have made their call on that, and I don't think there's any going back. But we're in a slightly better position in that Josh Moore is available in the full back line. I think that's a big asset for us.
And John, I suppose you've written before in the past, you'd prefer to see Aidan O'Shea further in the field towards goal. Would you still go with that?
Yeah, I think, Ray's absolutely right. He takes so much out of the ball. He takes it into traffic, far too often, and turnovers, and there's no doubt he's an outstanding, iconic Gaelic footballer, and has captured the headlines on lots of occasions, but the mobility box to box is an issue, and everybody.
We saw that in the All Ireland last year.
We did. Where Cluxton in particular absolutely screwed him on his kick-outs, left and right side, and Aidan he has great strength. There's no doubt about it. He has fantastic aerial ability as well. He's got huge attributes, but I think at number 11, I think we've had huge problems with on the half forward line. Andy Moore appears to be not 100% fit. I expect Alan Dillon will definitely start there, but I would like to see Aidan O'Shea start at 11. But the other good thing is, from a Mayo perspective, is that we've moved Keith Higgins from our half forward line back to his rightful position at corner back, because Gerard Cafferty's game was beginning to struggle, in particular throughout the National League, and I think Keith Higgins, who's an outstanding all-star corner back, one of the best in the business, and recognises Ben. Unfortunately, Keith, I suppose through a dearth of quality forwards, in particular the half forward line, where we tried to energise our half forward line. He did a great job there last year up to a point. Unfortunately, we left him in the All-Ireland final sitting back on a man that was operating on one leg, and Dublin had emptied their bench. Ironically enough, when we showed him back up to the half forward line for the last 10 minutes, we could have won the All-Ireland. But anyway, notwithstanding that, he's back now corner back in his rightful position. So I think we have a more solid look in the defence.
I think John might be.
Because I have a sneaky suspicion, talking to a few, if Chris Barrett
is playing very well,
fit, and is playing well, that you'll find Keith Higgins could be back up to 10 again, John. And I know it's to everybody's dismay as like Mayo or better.
Would you, if you were a manager of the Mayo team, would you play?
Did you ever try Kenneth Mortimer?
I'm marking when you. And he threw all stairs at
that stage, he couldn't play cornerback.
All right. Oh my God, he wasn't able to play back then. Yeah, but no, I see. It's Rob and Peter to play, Paul, but it is like you're talking about Higgins and Mortimer, two very similar, brilliant cornerbacks, and you feel that they can play anywhere. But I think Mayo are a much better team with Higgins at 4. But you will, I guarantee, if Chris Barrett is fit and they're struggling in half forward, and Tom Caniff, unless there's an injury, you'll find in the championship you'll see Keith Higgins up the field.
Well, that'd be a shame.
I agree with you, but I think that's where you'll find it.
I suppose, Kevin, this is Alan Mahon's 3rd year in charge team. How would you rate his progress so far with it?
In fairness, there's been an awful turnover of players, and as Ria said there, I think it's whatever 5 or 6 is starting next week. You know, it's been turning over, and the under-21s are coming through as well. So I suppose next Sunday's a huge barometer to where they've come.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of young players there, but it is time for Galway to come close and give a bit of hope going forward. You know, I know we have the Cork thing last year, but was that a false bit of a dawn?
Yeah.
It possibly was on the basis of the Waterford Tipperary game beforehand, and we saw what, you know, I mean, Dublin could probably have beaten Cork after it by 12. They didn't beat them by 6, they were beaten by 12, and you have to become closer more often. And Sunday is certainly, it's the first. That's why I mentioned the intensity early on. The intensity is going to be up to a level that these boys haven't hit. No, they could quite be well able to hit it, but if they're not, they're going to be in trouble. If they can hit it and get there, it's serious progress.
I would just say it's a 2009 since Galway played Division 1. It's a long time ago.
Or the last kind of final, Mayo beat us, the famous Paddy Gardner point in 2009.
Well, that game is more famous for R.I.P. Micheál Jackson.
Yes.
that was the 09 game. And it's, but that's, I think I just had a quick look, and that was a nice attribute for Conor Mortimer. It was nice of him to pay homage.
The leagues, John, the leagues, I'd say Monaghan and Donegal are up to final, both coming from Division 2.
That's true.
So,
but just for the intensity over a period of time, Kevin, I was talking to you before we came on here to say that the Galway team aren't as familiar.
Yeah, the only thing, John, I mean, if you look at intensity, I think with the introduction of the black card this year, Division 1 was as loose, and there was huge high scoring. It was kind of Division 1 teams went out and played with kind of a reckless abandon in games. And if you look for intensity, you'll get greater intensity in Division 4 and Division 3. And to a lesser extent maybe in Division 2. I mean, Division 1, I was at, say, the number of games in here in Mayo Park, I'm sure it was, I mean, Kerry and Cork. Cork were down, they qualified, in fairness, for the playoffs and the semi-finals at that stage. But I mean, I never saw, in hindsight, it probably was a true benchmark of where they were actually at. They were absolutely dreadful that day in Mayo Park. And, Kerry had the same kind of way. There was no blanket defences, there was no fouling, and there was no real intensity. So there was no intensity, John, in Division 1 to a large extent, from what I could witness. Greater intensity down the lower divisions.
You've been talking too much to Mickey McGeehan, I think.
I wonder with Colm, it's Mayo going for 4 in a row, like maybe has James and whoever his backroom team are maybe trying to pace things a little bit more for August this year rather than that. So I think when you're going for 4 in a row, I think Kevin's point, you would hope that Galway would be coming with a serious A game and saying, look, we've nothing to lose here, we've tear into these guys. And even reading Andy in the Connacht Council thing or Into the West magazine, it's when you're going for 4 in a row, you can't imagine the hunger should be as high there as the fellas that haven't won one before. And just Brian Carthy does those books championship. I was just looking 2008. Garrett Bradshaw and Finian Hanley are the only two
medals
left. From then, Sice is gone, Niall Coleman is gone, Peja's gone, Nicholas Joyce is away, Nicky whoever he is,
Michael Meehan's are gone.
So we talk about turnover, and I suppose we're going to part 3 about looking at a national level. The intensity, the amount of training, the amount of time involved now. Like you know, I suppose Kevin, particularly with Sligo recently, like you're looking at 20 hours for club county players, 25, 30. If you're not, at least if you're winning, you're getting something out of it. But if you're not winning anything at all, it's hard going. Like so, 2 in 6 years is unbelievable, isn't it?
And just before we wrap up, I will look for a final prediction for you. Who will win and what by? John Maughan.
I think Mayo will win about 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, I'd say Mayo by 5 maybe. I don't know what the handicap is there, but I'd say Mayo by 4 or 5, unless we have to put in the caveat, unless Galway just produced something we haven't seen, and maybe Mayo. I think Mayo have gone back from where they are and Galway have improved. So about 4 points. 4 to 5 points.
John Casey?
Well, to not agree with Ray, I was going to say 5, but I'm going to say 6 now. I had 5 in my head. It is the bookies' handicap, I think, is roughly around the 5 mark. So I
they're
think
usually right.
Well, they're never far wrong. So I think it's going to be. But look at here, you never know. I'm hoping for a close game, Colm. I don't want to run away like we had last year because it's no good for either team. It will demoralise Galway as much as Mayo people. We might want that to happen, but we don't for a spectacle. So I'm thinking maybe 6 points, but it could be a struggle.
And Kevin?
Yeah, I'd be in the same corner. I'd say 3 to 5. Just back to Ray's point, I just think this is the fourth in a row. Mayo are looking for a lot further on, even though they have to get past this. This is an All-Ireland final on Sunday for Galway. It really is. They've absolutely nothing to lose. It's there for them. And if they can bring, I keep using this intensity, if they can bring an intensity we haven't seen, and in fairness to them, they didn't have to show it yet. Getting rattled in early on. We were there ourselves in 98 different times. Young lads came on the block. They just didn't give a hoot, and they went for everything. And if Galway can take that, and the Mayo was slightly off guard, you just don't know what will happen. But I would be saying 3 to 5. 3 to 5 really.
I'd just like to thank the lads very much for their time this evening, and I hope you've enjoyed that vodcast and join us for our overall championship one.